So a man was working in a produce department of a local grocery store, and a woman approached him to ask if she could buy half a head of lettuce. He said, "Half a head of lettuce? Are you serious?" She says, "Yeah, I want a half a head of lettuce." He says, "God made whole heads of lettuce, lady, and that's how we sell them." And she says, "You mean I've been coming to this grocery store since 1972 and you won't sell me a half a head of lettuce?" And he says, "Look, I could go and ask the manager if you'd like." And she indicated that yes, she would like. And so this kid goes to the front of the store and finds the manager, Joe, and leans in and said, "Joe, you will not believe it. There is this lame-brained, dumb cough of a woman in the produce aisle looking to buy half a head of lettuce." You could see a strange look on Joe, the manager's face, and he turned around to notice that the woman had followed him from the back of the store and was standing directly behind him. So he immediately turned back to the manager and said, "Oh, and this nice lady would like to buy the other half." Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Aaron Village Alliance Church. My name's Daryl. I'm one of the pastors here, and this morning I am thrilled to be able to tell you that the incurable disease of foot and mouth disease has, in fact, been cured, and no doubt, coincidentally, right smack dab in the middle of the book of Ecclesiastes, because that's where we're having a series right now. We're in week 3 of a series. So why don't you turn to someone and tell them that you're glad that they're here. And if you have a Bible, why don't you grab it, or else grab your phone and find your way to the Bible app. My notes for today are there. I have posted the scriptures I'm using in the Bible app. We're in Ecclesiastes chapter 5. While you're flipping there, let me give you some context. Up to this point in Ecclesiastes, the author has been speaking to a very broad audience. That's a quick tip if you're trying to figure out what the Bible's saying to you at any given point, is you try and figure out who the intended audience was at the time that the Bible was written, and that might help you figure out what the author intended to communicate. So up to this point, Solomon, or the author, was making observations on life in general to a very general audience. He was speaking to rich people and poor people. He was speaking to married people and single people, from the mailroom to the C-suite. Observations about life, things that he saw as he searched for wisdom and direction. He tried to make sense of life under the sun. But in Ecclesiastes 5, everything changes. In Ecclesiastes 5, he does 2 things. First, conspicuously, he narrows his target. He's no longer just kind of speaking to anybody. He's narrowing his target. And second, he changes his tone. Do you guys all know what I mean when I say that? Parents all know what I mean when I say changes its tone. Parents are masters at interpreting the field of tone. How your kids answer you when you call determines everything about what's going to happen next, right? You guys all know about tone. Tone changes everything. It's not just the tone of your voice that matters, though. It's the tone of your heart that matters. My mom used to say, "Don't you look at me with that tone of voice." And she was right. She was right. Solomon changes his tone here. It's easy to glaze over. I admit, when you're reading Ecclesiastes and he seems to be just spouting off about, wealth and stuff and life and whatever, especially when he keeps carrying on about how, well, it's all meaningless anyways. Many people, when they try and read Ecclesiastes, they don't even make it to chapter 5. They kind of check out in chapter 4. But everything has changed. Now, you can hear it in the tone of his voice. He's no longer staring off lost into middle distance. Now he's looking right at you. I won't pick on you guys. He's looking right at you, and you can hear in the tone of his voice that he's got something that you need to hear. So poke your neighbor and tell them, "You need to hear this." Okay, neighbor, poke them back. Some of you guys don't like these play-along games, do you? I can tell by that. I just gave you permission to poke your neighbor. You've been waiting to give them an elbow in the kidney anyway since you got here. Solomon isn't talking to just anyone anymore, or everyone for that matter. He's actually talking to you. That means he's talking to church folk. He's talking to people who come to places like this. Anybody trying to figure out how God fits into their lives? Anyone trying to figure out how to live their life in a way that honors God? Now he's talking to you. And his tone has changed. It's more direct than it's been up to this point. He changes his voice. Everything changes in Ecclesiastes 5. Because this morning Solomon identifies 3 pitfalls for people of faith. Now I know you guys. All I have to do is say wet paint and you're reaching out to touch it. You know, every time you see a sign that says no trespassing, you're climbing the fence because you want to know what they're hiding back there. And I know you guys. Kind of reminds me actually of when I was visiting my sister who lives in New York. At the time she lived in, I think it's called Garden City on Long Island. So we were standing on the platform of the Long Island Railway, and as we were waiting for the train, the intercom piped up and we heard, "Hi, I'm Alec Baldwin. Please watch the gap." It's a true story. Alec Baldwin. And I know, it was inspiring. You're thinking, I am on it, Alec Baldwin. I will not let you down. I will. It was inspiring to me, maybe not for you. Some of you wrote me off the second I said pitfalls for people of faith because I said pitfalls and because I'm not Alec Baldwin. If I was Alec Baldwin, maybe you would listen to what I said. I'm pleading with you, don't tune me out because it's not me who's talking today, I hope. Pitfalls for people of faith. So if you found it, Ecclesiastes chapter 5, I'm going to read to you the first verse. It says, "Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong." Someone once gave me the very wise advice never to listen to Coldplay on the way to their show. Have you ever heard that? Any concert attenders there? Never listen to the band that you're going to see. Because if you arrive at the concert expecting a studio quality presentation, you're going to be disappointed. Is that fair? I thought it was great advice. Why? Because your expectations will flavor your experience. That's true, right? Your expectations will flavor your experience. Have you heard beauty is in the eye of the beholder? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Actually, there's a study, 2001, scientists asked 54 enology students. Am I saying that right? Anybody? O-E-N-O. It's people who study wine tasting and winemaking. Who knew? Enology. So these students, 54 enology students, and the study was this. They had to taste 1 glass of red wine and 1 glass of white wine and describe each wine in as much detail as their expertise would allow. And they did. Even though the scientists had given them 2 glasses of the exact same wine, but they just dyed the one red. They did. So even experts' expectations flavor their experience. Even for experts, even for some of you. You guys aren't immune to this. Your expectations will flavor your experiences. Well, there's a couple stories where Jesus experienced that. You wouldn't be surprised to know. Matthew chapter 13, Jesus goes to his own hometown to begin teaching people in the synagogue. And the guy whose dog he used to walk was sitting right in the front row. And the lady whose lawn he used to cut was sitting there in the back row. And it says that they were amazed. Just not in the way that you expect. Where did this man get this wisdom, these miraculous powers, they asked. Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't that Mary's kid? Where's this guy getting all of this stuff? Who does he think he is? Verse 57 says, "And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, 'A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home.'" Verse 58 says that he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. And I couldn't possibly make this up, but it's just like Wayne's World in the Greek. I'm serious, it is. The word for not is a word that's used in direct questions expecting an affirmative answer. You would think that Jesus was always able to do miracles. You'd think that he was always able to heal someone's heart. You think that he was always able to change someone's life. Not. But he was not. Yeah, but apparently it depends. What Jesus was able to do depends in some way. And in some way, sometimes it depends on your faith, because faith-filled expectations also flavor experiences too. Yeah, that's good news. Faith-filled expectations can flavor experiences too. So Jesus actually preached on this in Mark chapter 9. A dad had come to him because his son was in a mess of trouble. Jesus, who is in no way just a dispenser of miracles, actually paused and talked to this guy and and tried to hear the story and find out more about it and show love and just genuine concern for this guy. And to his credit, the man brought his mess to Jesus. That's a great first step. Bring your mess to Jesus. But it all went a little bit sideways when the man, after telling his story, and maybe because Jesus wasn't doing what he expected, maybe he expected that Jesus would just heal his kid and they'd both be able to go home in time for lunch. But Jesus was all chatty that day, I guess, or something. It went sideways because after he had told Jesus his story, he says, Jesus, it's really bad, but if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. If you can, Jesus asked, if you can, all things are possible for the one who believes. All things. Sermon over. Last week I said that for some of you, the thing that you want most is the very thing that's limiting what God wants to do in your life. And today I'm telling you to guard your steps when you go near to the house of God, because your expectations will flavor your experiences. And that could be great news, or it can be terrible news. That means if you're prepared to listen, God's prepared to speak. Yeah, if you come hungry and thirsty after righteousness, God says, I'm ready to feel you. If you come saying, God, I need to know your presence today, God is prepared to meet you here. So Solomon gives us next what might be one of those two kinds of people things. I love this. I think the world always boils down to there are two types of people. The first is those who do not know that they do wrong, and so they offer the sacrifice of fool. That's on the slide, right? Those who do not know they do wrong, and so they offer the sacrifice of fools. The second kind are those who know that they do not know that they do wrong, and so they go near to listen. Yeah, we're all lost. Like we all need to come humbly, because we all really don't have a clue. And we'll always constantly be surprised at what God will do. But those are the two types of people. Those are the two types of people in this world. Those who do not know that they do wrong, and so they like and share the article on Facebook without fact checking. Right? And those who know that they do not know that they do wrong, and so they don't like or share the article. Well, maybe they like it, but they don't share it without fact checking the sources. For all types of people today, pitfall one is that your expectations flavor your experiences. If there's anything that you do differently after this point, every Sunday morning when you wake up, say, God, let cause hope to rise in me so that I expect that you're going to do something good in my life. Your faith can move mountains. Your faith can move mountains, but if you come to prayer, or if you approach your faith, or if you come to church thinking that you have all of this figured out, you might miss something that God is doing around you because you weren't expecting to see it. So give God an opportunity to do something. Would you do that? Would you give him a chance to tell you something that you weren't expecting? Would you give him a chance to tell you something that you need to hear? That's pitfall number one. Pitfall number two, remember that everything you say is spiritual. Next, Solomon says, do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God, because God is in heaven and you're on earth. So let your words be few. My mom used to tell me that if you don't have anything nice to say, you guys know my mom. That's awesome. Oh, right. It's because every mom said that. If you don't have anything nice to say. Jimmy Kimmel has an awesome segment, though, doesn't he? Celebrity tweets. Do you guys know that one? Celebrity mean tweets. Celebrities get up on his stage and read mean tweets that have been said about them. Okay, now when I say this, I am not encouraging you to go home and Google that, because it seriously took me 10 minutes to find one that was appropriate to say on stage at church, okay? So please do not. People say mean things. That's the point. Don't Google it. People say mean things. But I did find a couple that I thought were awesome. And when I say that, I don't know what I mean by that. Jake Gyllenhaal, right? Everybody loves Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal gets on stage and he's got his cell phone and he's reading this tweet. It says, Jake Gyllenhaal has the most punchable face of all time. I'd like nothing more than to sock him in his ugly, soft, starry-eyed pug face. Jake Gyllenhaal. Like, he's so nice. Jake Gyllenhaal. There was another one, Naomi Watts. The tweet says, not to sound mean, but Naomi Watts has such a blah face. I look at it and there's just nothing. Like a blank space where features should be. Do you figure that's what Solomon was talking about when he said, do not be quick with your mouth, do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything. But do you think Solomon was saying, don't be mean? I don't know, maybe. Proverbs 18:21 says, the tongue can bring death or life, and those who love to talk will reap the consequences. Another translation says, those who love it will eat its fruit. I like that one too. Do you like that? The tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. Any Scooby-Doo fans out there? Yeah, right? Okay, so when I was growing up, it was old Scooby-Doo. And I'm not dissing new Scooby-Doo. I'm just saying that everything changed. Okay? There was a point at which Scooby-Doo got kind of weird. I'm just throwing that out there. But in one episode where there were voodoo dolls. Okay? Do you guys know what voodoo dolls are? Voodoo dolls, whenever they are handled, the person after which they are fashioned experiences the corresponding trauma. Know what I mean by that? That means if you pummel Daphne doll for play, you pummel Daphne in real life. That's a voodoo doll. You tighten the pressure on Velma in the doll, and Velma gets a headache in real life. You take a dart and stab the doll in the back, and you've just stabbed the person in the back. Now, I don't believe in voodoo dolls. Like, I don't believe in voodoo dolls, but I do believe that enough of us tell Jake Gyllenhaal that he's got an ugly, soft, starry-eyed pug face that he might start to believe it. He might. Or if enough of us tell Jake Gyllenhaal that he's got an ugly, soft, starry-eyed pug face, when he's walking down the street someday with his kids might start to fear that someday someone is going to sock their daddy in the face as they're walking down the street, and they might actually start to be afraid to walk down the street. So I do believe in that. I believe that words have the power of life and death. Words have the power of life and death. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will tear your heart out. I believe in that. So this morning, Solomon's looking us in the eye. You can tell by the tone of his voice he ain't messing around, and he says, do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. Twitter, that's fine. Facebook is no problem. You're having some beers with your mates over apps, and that's all good. A little harmless banter, that's all good, right? As long as the person or the creator can't hear, we're probably good to let fly, right? Not. Yeah, you guys don't believe that. You guys don't believe that. So Solomon says, mind your gap when you're tempted to say something out loud that's better left unsaid. Remember, as Benjamin Franklin said, remember not only to say the right thing in the right place, but far more difficult still to leave unsaid the wrong thing at the tempting moment. I like that one. So how can you tell? How can you tell if something is better left unsaid? Solomon says, do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. Anything. Ephesians 4 says, only. Say only what is helpful for building others up so that it will benefit those who live. If you're ever having trouble figuring out, don't be hasty to utter anything, but if you're going to say something, only say what's helpful for building others up so it will benefit those who listen. And this should be easy for you guys, right? Because as Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Right? So this is going to be easy for you guys. You normally kind and heart-healthy people, if you notice all of a sudden that prideful words or angry words or judgmental words or even mean words start coming out your gap, then you're going to recognize it right away. It'll almost be like Alec Baldwin's voice peeking up in your head and saying, hi, I'm Alec Baldwin. Where did that come from, Buckle? Like, why did you just say that? That's not the kind of person you want to be, is it? Well, no, it's not, Alec Baldwin. That's not the kind of person I want to be at all. I didn't think so. So I'm glad we had this chat. Remember, I'm Alec Baldwin, reminding you to be careful what you say out loud, because everything you say is spiritual. Some of you needed Alec Baldwin to say that right now. I'm not Alec Baldwin, but don't miss Solomon's warning to us. And his final warning says, do not be hasty in your heart. We kind of coasted right past that, didn't we? Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God hears the stories you tell yourself in your heart just as loudly as he hears the stories that you're sharing at work or on Facebook, and they all smell. They all sound. I meant to say sound. They all sound the same. All right, listen. Just because some of you are better at zipping your lip doesn't mean that what's going on in your heart is okay. Just because some of us, I should have said it like that. I'm sorry for picking on you. Just because some of us are better at zipping it, realizing loose lips sink ships. Just because some of us are better at that, it doesn't mean what's going on in our hearts is okay. What's going on in our hearts matters to Jesus. It matters. He hears. Before a word is formed on our lips, he hears our hearts. That's the best news ever. It means he's already at work answering our prayers before we even cry out to him. He's a loving God. This is all good news, but there's a flip side. Here's the flip side. Research from Stanford University shown complaining actually shrinks the hippocampus. It's the area of the brain that's critical to problem solving and intelligent thought. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. Okay? It's giving you brain damage. That's good stuff right there. When you complain, your body releases the stress hormone, cortisol. Some of you have heard of cortisol. Cortisol shifts you into the fight or flight reaction, right? Directing oxygen and blood and energy away from everything except for those systems that are essential for immediate survival. One of the effects of cortisol, for example, is it raises your blood pressure and your blood sugar so that you'll be prepared to either escape or defend yourself. All that extra cortisol impairs your immune system and makes you more susceptible to high cholesterol, to diabetes, to heart disease, and obesity. Even makes the brain more vulnerable to strokes. You're going to give yourself a stroke. I'm not laughing at you. I'm not laughing at you. Since human beings are inherently social, our brains mimic naturally the moods of those people around us, particularly people that we spend a great deal of time with. And the process, because you asked, is called neuronal mirroring. Neuronal mirroring, it's the basis for our ability to feel empathy. This is a good trait that God has created you with. The ability to to feel empathy, because you mirror, you understand the moods. You pick up on the moods of people around you. The flip side is that it makes complaining a lot like smoking. Yeah, you don't even have to do it to suffer the effects of it. Your cholesterol might be high this morning because of who you hung out with last night. Secondhand complaining. Here's the kicker. Research shows that most people complain once a minute during a typical conversation. Once a minute. Yeah. God designed your brain to love efficiency. That's what it looks like inside your brain. Those are your neurons, your synapses. When you repeat a behavior, like once a minute, if you repeat a behavior such as complaining, your neurons branch out to each other to ease the flow of information. This makes it much easier to repeat that behavior in the future. So easy, in fact, that you might get to the point, this is straight from the article, where you do not even know that you're doing wrong. It's true. So your neurons grow closer together and the connections become permanent. Scientists like to describe this process as neurons that fire together, wire together. Man, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Some days that's a bit of a nightmare, isn't it? Repeated complaining rewires your brain to make future complaining more likely. It creates a confirmation bias, which is the tendency to search for or interpret or favor or recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs or expectations. And we're right back to where we started, drinking our own Kool-Aid or red wine or stuck where our expectations flavor our experiences. You see how that happened? But the good news is that there are few things that have more power to grow our faith, to change our lives, to transform our future as the disciplined and intentional practice of taking our thought, every neuron of our thought life captive and making it obey Christ, making it thankful in Christ, hopeful in Christ, prayerful in Christ, taking our thoughts captive and making them obedient to Christ. That's the first thing saying the second thing, the practice of minding the gap and putting limits on what opinions or offenses we speak life to. Yeah, and there's very few things that are more powerful to grow us in our faith than hearing and maybe heeding what Solomon says, let your words be few.